This episode of the Simon Racing Report is brought to you by our website, the SimonRacingReport.com. It's at the bottom of the screen, and you can find the links to the YouTube channel, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. Where else are we on? We got the RSS feed too, and you can subscribe at all of those platforms, whatever floats your boat, of course, and however you listen to these. Remember, the Simon Racing Report is not only a podcast, it's a content creation platform. So I write columns. There's also features. There's analysis videos for sim racing, tutorial videos, so much more as well. And just got to find all the time to get all this content out on my own, which is the tough part. If you'd like to sponsor the podcast, feel free to contact me using the contact form at the SimonRacingReport.com. Just click contact at the top of the screen, and you can find pretty much a link to contact me, and we can discuss and get your product advertised for sure, or whatever service you offer. Don't forget to follow Team Mad. They are at Mad Sim Racing. Follow them on Twitter. And you can catch Paul Smith and the rest of the crew there behind the scenes in their endeavors throughout sim racing in 2019 for the rest of the year and beyond into 2020. So check them out for sure. But let's keep this intro short. Season Review Podcast is coming up right now. Hope you enjoyed it. It was one of the best ones I've recorded for sure. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Welcome to the Simon Racing Report for the 2019 iRacing Rallycross Season Review Podcast with Boom, Randy Chenowth. First time we got you on video for a podcast.
Boom. Yeah, that's right. First time for video for me. How's it going?
Very well. This is probably going to be my most laid-back podcast. I've got a cup of tea, I think for the first time ever on a podcast, and you're coming in hot, which is the difference. I'm coming in laid back. So it's like good cop, bad cop in a way, but I'm still going to be bad cop.
Right. Yeah, you're going to be, yeah, that's the problem. You're going to be the good cop, but the good cop is really bad.
Yeah, it's like, so the championship standings, Sammy Matty Trogan confirmed champion yesterday. Sammy Matty Trogan, brilliant championship for him. Mitchell DeJong, had he not missed 2 rounds, could have easily won the championship. Heikkinen, Zelensky, Taskinen round out the top 5. Johan Hart with that abysmal final round, of course, drops out of the top 5 of the standings. And for me, was this, when you look at these top 5, top 10 in the standings, was it what you expected coming into 2019?
I definitely think a couple of the names are expected. Mitchell's definitely, the 2 that stand out, I think, that we could have pointed our finger at, and I think said those 2 will be up in the top 5, if not the top 3, are probably Mitchell DeJong and Joni Heikkinen, for sure. Mm-hmm. Sammy was, to a certain extent, a little bit of an unknown coming in, I think, for a lot, obviously, the way he came through. But I don't think it's any surprise. Bobby definitely performed very well. And I honestly have to say, of that top 5, if there's a surprise driver, it's probably Otto Taskinen. Otto really impressed me this.
Yeah, and he's a rookie too, Otto Taskinen, don't forget. I mean, so was Sammy Matty Trogan, but Otto Taskinen, unexpected to be up there. I did speak to Julian Shine. Do you remember I mentioned this during the round 1 broadcast? And I spoke to Julian Shine, I think, the day of the broadcast, and he messaged me telling me, look, all these other drivers are really, really good. They're really quick, but don't overlook Otto Taskinen. I've been racing with him, I don't know if he said back in Live for Speed or something back in the day, but he said that Otto Taskinen is one of the quickest drivers he's ever met in his life. And Julian Shine should work in the betting markets, or at least bet for me or something, because I would have earned millions of dollars had I put money on him.
I don't know about millions of dollars, but yeah, you're right. I mean, Otto did extremely well, and he outperformed, I think, a lot of the drivers that people thought were going to be up in that top 5. There's a lot of names that even coming in as rookies I thought were relatively disappointing and really didn't do that impressive, didn't really impress me, and there's even a number of returning drivers I thought were going to do really well that really underperformed, but Otto is definitely not one of them. Bobby Zelensky really stepped his game up as well, another driver in that top 5. I'm not sure if people would have picked him as a top 5 driver, and granted, he didn't really look it early in the season when the eNASCAR PK series was still happening. When that season ended after the Homestead race, it seemed like Bobby really stepped his game up on the Rallycross. And
yeah, exactly.
He really showed what he's capable of.
I mean, that happened in the Supercars E series. Once Porsche ended, Josh Rogers and Jared Filsell just ran away with the series, because they had more time to commit to that dog of a V8 supercar. Thank God it's not going to be used anymore. But now I look at the rest of the standings. Chepelevsky falling outside the top 10 was one of the biggest surprises I've ever seen in a world championship in quite some time. Over this decade of iRacing World Championships, obviously lost a lot of motivation throughout the year, no luck on his side, and so on. Looking down the order, Adria Perez 16th. Like, Adria Perez isn't the 16th quickest driver. I think he's a lot quicker than that on the right day. So for Perez to be 16th surprises me too. The biggest surprise, I think, of all, 3 drivers didn't make the feature. That was Cedric Gesmeyer, Marcos Matamoros, and Michael Guest. Michael Guest finished last in the standings. He scored podiums last year in feature races.
Yeah, something happened with Michael. I mean, obviously, he only had a 7 weeks counted. So, I mean, when you start missing like over 20% of the rounds, we're going to finish dead last. I'm not sure if there was driving standards issues. Maybe things coming down from stewards. I don't know the full story there. But you're right about a couple of those names. Cheppy's probably one of the drivers that I think really underperformed this year. I think everyone coming in kind of thought Cheppy was going to do really well.
Yeah.
Your point on Adria Perez, I think, is very good. Adria Perez, obviously he was in a Volkswagen this year. And it seemed like, if memory serves, he was usually about the most consistent Beetle driver, either be in or fighting for a spot in the feature rounds every single week.
Yeah, exactly.
Seemed like that was the case. But what seemed to be the case with Adria is that whenever he got an aggressive fight, I know people like to rip on the Spaniards, but it definitely seemed true for Adria, is that whenever he got into a close or a really important battle, he tended to get into contact with people, and either they would go flying off the track or he would go flying off the track. And I think that's really what costed Adria a lot of results. There's a lot of times where when Adria was having to fight with race cars on a weekly basis, that there was some pretty severe contact happening, and I think that's why he's not in the top 10 as opposed to, or even maybe the top 5. I think he has the speed to be up there. He just doesn't have the racecraft.
He qualified 3rd yesterday in the season finale, had pole for the heat, and which, by the way, can I mention, great to have 3 heats for every round this season, not like last year where participation lacked. But for Daytona as well, for round 8, I think he qualified top 5 or 6. I can't remember, but he was up there. He had like a front row position for the heats for sure. Every round, like, I'm going to actually look at his qualifying results. Every round, Adria Perez qualified really well. Again, like you said, it just came down to the races and the contact, whether some were his fault, some weren't. I just surprised that he was 16th because I think this year showed us he was a top 10 driver at times in terms of pace. So the first segment of the day that we're going to do, Randy, are the stories / the status quo of the season. And we're going to discuss these, and we're going to rank them in 2 categories. So we're going to have the green flag stories and the red flag stories. Obviously, green flag stories means they're good for the series, and we agree that they were advantageous to the Rallycross World Championship. Red flag stories is the opposite. They were a detriment to the series. So the first one I want to bring up to you, and I think this is, you got to agree with me whether this is green flag or red flag. We're going to rank it. The Joker ticks showing in the broadcast instead of us having to find the exclamation mark in the lap charts, green or red flag.
That's definitely a red flag. I wish that they would update live. Because obviously the way our timing and scoring works for our overlays is that they update at the line. I wish that there was some way to pick up that they hit the Joker lap live, but other than that, no, I think that's probably the clearest green flag of all, if I'm honest. I don't know if there's any more going to be another thumbs up from anyone.
Yeah, I know. If that's 100%, everybody's voting that a green flag. Like you said, I don't even think iRacing and the lap charts update live. You have to wait till the lap ends, obviously, for the exclamation mark to pop up.
There's some stuff that does. Some of our stuff does, but most of the stuff like testing to see if people have been on pit road or other things like that. There are certain parts of our graphics that update on a lap by lap basis, and to be honest, the Joker lap does make sense for that.
Yeah, most certainly. So I appreciated that as a commentator this year. So thanks iRacing for managing that. Definite red flag story for me was Phil Diaz's luck in 2019. Like, you look at rounds 1, 2, and 3 at Atlanta, Daytona, Sonoma. He missed out on spots in the feature, I think by 1 position at each of those rounds. Took him till round 8 to make his first feature at Daytona. And I just couldn't believe his luck this year because, again, he's someone, when we spoke about the standings, he was 21st in the standings, but that's only because he made 1 feature.
Yeah, I mean, and, Phil, even going right up to the last race that just happened earlier today, he had a transfer spot to go to the feature before he found the wall. I didn't actually see what happened live because I was commentating someone else, and you start yelling, Phil's in the wall, Phil's, or Paul did in my ear, one of the two. But he made a mistake and he lost that transfer spot late in that LCQ. I think he ended up third. I think it was on the final lap or starting the final lap. So, yeah, definite red flag for Phil there on the luck this year. He definitely could. I mean, he could have been top 15, top 10 in points as you know, if you start adding up points of even if he had just made the feature and finished dead last with the way the feature points are valued.
Yeah. 43 points for last.
Yeah, 43 points versus what, 10 or 15. You start adding 30 points 4 or 5 times, like what? That's like another 118 points. Suddenly he's knocking on the door of the top 10. So yeah, definitely not what Phil would have wanted out of his season. Sure.
No, certainly not. Here's a good question for you, and rank this as a green or red flag story. If someone who's never driven Rallycross before in iRacing started last, was 4 seconds off the pace, do you think they could make the feature in a World Championship race? Because of all the crashes.
Yes. Depending on the event, depending on the heat, depending on the LCQ, yes. The driving standards were bad enough.
Which event pops out at you?
There were several. I mean, a lot of it came down to luck. I think just about every event had at least one bad heat and one bad LCQ. You think about today, for example, what happened at Atlanta. The first heat I thought went well, and then I think the second heat is I think where everything went crazy. Or maybe it was the third heat, can't remember exactly, but one of those two heats there was pandemonium, and then it was again basically happened in the LCQ, where we'd have like an LCQ that was sort of clean, and then an LCQ that was not so clean. And I don't think there's any one event that was really worse than others. I think there was probably events that maybe an individual start was like notoriously bad, but I think just about every week, I think you could just about, as long as someone kept it on the track, was able to file in behind people and just let them crash in front of them, especially at the starts, you were nearly able to, I think, get one of the lower, like a really lower end, below average driver into feature races.
I think if it's maybe 3 seconds off the pace is a little bit too much, because I still think over 5 laps, that's what, 15 seconds. I think that's a little bit of an exaggeration. But if it was just your average rallycross driver, maybe they're a second off the pace, possibly they could have made it. So you never know. Now, another story is real life teams partnering with the virtual teams. Green or red flag story? I think this is mostly a green, but I can see where someone can argue where this is a red.
I think it has to be a green. I know that especially there's been a lot of drama this year around this. It started with the peak draft, and then it kind of happened with the way things went. Kind of extended into this. They didn't have a draft, but I do know there were some real teams that extended sort of, hey, we're interested in being involved. We want to partner with you. You would be our driver, so to speak. So obviously, if you had a team, you wouldn't have a team you'd be representing, but I can't say it's a bad thing. I mean, you look what happened to Garrett Lowe and the relationship he had with the Arpins at Lowe and Bro Racing. It's hard to say that that's a negative. Similar to what we saw with Set. I know that there's real team interaction there. That's definitely a good thing. I don't see how that could be perceived as a bad thing.
Yeah.
Jim Beaver Esports. Jim Beaver is, I think, one of, even though I don't think they have the strongest driver lineup overall, Bobby and Connor have definitely had moments where they looked really good. Bobby St. Jr. had weeks he looked very good in the USAC sprint cars, being up near the front of the field. But he wasn't as consistently up there, and he's not someone I would identify as a championship favorite. But Jim Beaver Esports is one of the most represented teams in sim racing now on the American side. He had teams in the World of Outlaws championships. He had teams in USAC. He had teams in the eNASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series championship. He had teams in, obviously, in the Thrustmaster iRacing Rallycross World Championship. Yep. Jim Beaver, I mean, he really came in full force this year around the time the dirt trucks were added in, and I've got to give big credit to Jim. I think he supported those guys really well. He didn't immediately jump to one of these top tier teams. A lot of the other sort of sponsors have done. I have a lot of respect for the way Jim entered the esports market, if I'm honest, and that's a definite green flag for me.
Yeah, so for me as well, 100% a green flag. As I said, the argument that teams could have made is whether or not They feel like real life teams are interfering with the sim racing teams. But again, let's get over that. It's just nice to have the partnership. It's not a takeover. It's a partnership. Like the Apex Racing team were still able to do what they did, sort of.
Right.
And they still managed to have the partnership with Patrick Sandell. So to me, it's no harm, no foul.
There are some negative examples to take from there, but I don't think any of them came from the Rallycross side.
No, none from Rallycross.
Yeah, I know of a couple examples. I know of one example from the Peak Antifreeze series where a team was not communicating with their drivers about liveries, and they were basically relying on their less than 18 years of age driver to rely and actually pick up skins and sponsorships for every single week. So it was a team that us on the media side we were consistently having issues with getting their skins on time. And the reason we were having issues with that is because the driver and his painter were having to wait until the real cars showed up at the real track on the race weekends, and they had photographs to reference, and then they would paint the cars. There are some examples. I won't name names.
Yeah.
There are some examples of teams that did not do their drivers well. I think they need to change the way they approach this going into 2020. But there are definitely teams that did it very well. Beaver, all the teams in the Rallycross, I think, were fine. Lowenbro, that Sandell, I think I had Beaver.
They're all good. Yeah.
Yeah, and on the Peak side, Richmond Raceway Esports was top notch as well. I've seen an email that went around to drivers there about the way that team is approaching 2020, and that team is, I think, the standard for sim racing teams to represent.
Well, there you go. So Richmond Raceway Esports, you said, look out for them in 2020. Now, can we wave flags quickly for the next few topics? So 9 races, no breaks in between. Love it or hate it. Were we waving a green or red flag for that?
I think the drivers probably disliked it. I didn't like how long of a break there was. It seemed like last year Rallycross ended around now.
This year started. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it ended around now. So, I can't remember exactly when the last round was last year. And it was basically a full year before Rallycross started again. But I also think the problem on top of that is that you've had more world championships and everything. So if you look at it in a vacuum and say Rallycross, yes, I would love for it to start sooner. But, if we're going to have 6 or 7 world championships going into next year, Peak, USAC, World of Outlaws, hopefully another road championship on top of Porsche gets figured out. I know there's supposedly things coming soon, and there's always deals being discussed in the background, and there's always things being discussed in the background. I know a lot of people are just like, they wiped out this world championship, and they're not thinking about it anymore than that. They're definitely thinking about these things.
I think next year, look, we need 2 more tracks for 2020, which is probably not going to happen, but I'd love to see 2 more different Rallycross tracks, not one circuit with 2 layouts. We need 2 different tracks. We need to run 12 rounds next year. Maybe visit Atlanta Long and Sonoma twice. So you got what? You take out what? Daytona Short, one of those layouts where there's just never good racing. Visit those circuits twice. I'm not sure if the math works here. What we do is we run it over like 18 weeks. So what if we have back-to-back rounds, then we have like a 1-week break and then repeat? And that's like an 18-week season.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good idea. I mean, I definitely agree that we need more tracks. It's something the dirt oval side needs as well. Just the dirt side in general, dirt oval, dirt road, we need more circuits. I know that we just obviously we got Catalunya. There's a Rallycross circuit there that needs to get finished out. That ticks 2 boxes. Yes. It's a permanent circuit. Well, Spa's I think a little different because they'd have to kind of figure out how to make that work with the way you. I'm talking about recent circuits.
No, I think the Rallycross circuit at Spa is like off the racetrack even, so I'm not sure if iRacing.
Yeah, it goes up a Rouge weird, doesn't it, and then back down, and then like into the pit lane. And
have you seen that? Have you seen that game called Ride to Hell Retribution or whatever?
No,
it's called?
I've not.
So like there was so many glitches in the game. It was one of the worst games ever made for PC. I think like you drive over the highway on a motorbike and you just fall through the earth sometimes. And I'm thinking,
oh yeah, well that was like I think Over the Road Racing is what it was called. There was another one that was like that
one too. That one's got that.
Yeah, too. It was like big rigs, and it was like you drive up onto a bridge, like in a ravine, and you just drive into the ravine, under the bridge, and then back over top.
And the speedometer, I don't know what it was measuring in that game, but it was like 4 nines, and I was like, "Well, what is this? Millimeters."
Yeah, you could like
a
go in
second?
reverse. You go in reverse faster than you could forward.
Yeah. So
there were some examples.
those types of shitty games. So I'm thinking, okay, if iRacing design a Spa circuit, it has to go under the grandstands near Eau Rouge. I can't remember how the circuit works. So I'm thinking, if they design that circuit, are we gonna like fall off the face of the earth because iRacing have like no clipping involved in that part of the circuit?
Yeah,
like,
I know that they said that in order for them to do a circuit, like there has to be certain elements that you try to use, like have to have been scanned as a surface.
Yeah.
But it all depends on how the 3D world was made in the 3D world. And there's like when you look at a track, like all the ground isn't the same everywhere. Like the racetrack is usually super high detail. And while a hill might be in the right place, instead of driving that hill, and sometimes like there's not even a collision model there because you're never expected to end up in that part of the racetrack. And and on top of that, like in some of these ovals that we have, not all of the infield access roads are super high quality asphalt because racing doesn't happen there.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
why the tracks that we have that work well are the tracks that they scanned that and they did well. IRP in Iowa, and that's why so many of the tracks, a significant part of the lap is just it's just infield oval on these ovals. But no, I mean, Catalunya, we know that, I think it's been mentioned by staff somewhere that they did scan the Rallycross circuit.
Yes.
But they haven't done it yet. I know that Coda has a Rallycross circuit, but I'm not sure if it was there when they scanned the track. I know they I think they did that construction later. Silverstone, I believe, has a Rallycross circuit.
Oh,
but
they
do it in the infield. It's not on the Grand Prix circuit. It's on the whatever, not the national, not the touring car layout, but it was it was the infield circuit that Richard Hammond drove the Renault F1 car on.
Yeah,
that was at Silverstone, but it's like a go-kart track. Basically.
Yeah, it's the inside of Stowe, the right hand, where the new pit complex is around there. So
yeah, I know that there's one there, but
well, bring it iRacing. Come on.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, we definitely need some more circuits. I'd love to get to a point that we have just a separate circuit every single week, and maybe we can stop going to some of these other tracks that cause issues.
Hell yeah.
Like maybe IRP. Like I love IRP. IRP to me is one of the most fun rallycross circuits to drive. I love the way the banking works. I love that sort of Lucas Oil.
Getting confused.
I love I love that hard braking zone into turn 1. I love the 290-degree flicks. I love the long gravel section that brings you back up onto the oval through the pit road. But that Joker lap's a problem.
I'm thinking the Joker there obviously needs to. I mean, can you really change it? It's like the Sochi pit entrance. Like, where else can you put it? It's like impossible.
I think you'd have to find some way to slow it down. Like, you'd almost have to put like a tire bollard chicane on the front straightaway. So instead of like the way the Joker currently starts, is it basically starts right at the apron. You'd have to start the Joker like halfway down the straightaway. Then you'd have to like take a chicane. Like that's the big thing is just getting the cars slowed down on that Joker because the way it's going now, I mean they're not quite flat out through that Joker lap, but it's like a little bit of a lift, maybe a dab of the brake, get the nose set, get it in, and then you're hard on the brakes. I think that's why we see the problems we have there. I think if you really slowed that Joker up, I think that layout would do very well. And that could also something else that could also help is if you just change where the starting box is. If maybe you could have this car start somewhere in the infield section, like let's say behind pit road. So you have the jump right now. Like maybe you could have it where the cars.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, like they're
That's
facing
a long
parallel.
first lap there. Let me tell you that much.
Well, I mean it is, but if it means that there's less death crashes going into the bottleneck that is currently turn 1, then so be it, in my opinion.
Yeah, good point. That would put everyone single file. Well, let's bring it to iRacing. 2 new tracks. iRacing next. You know what they're going to do? Like season 1 build. iRacing will be like, all right, Catalunia's coming. Coda, Silverstone Rallycross circuit's coming. And then season 2.
We'll be the saviors.
No Rallycross 2020 for the World Championship. No, that's a joke. Okay. But we got to move on because we've spent like 20 minutes on these. So next one is no points for consolation races. Green or red flag?
Red flag, in my opinion. I think it's a little.
It's a good thing.
I think it's not that great of a thing. I think that last year, I think you got too many points in the consolations, and I think swinging them back the other way, I think having absolutely no points in the consolation was a little bit too hard of a swing. I wish there was a bit of a better middle ground. I wish it wasn't as severe of a penalty, especially in the Rallycross. I mean, you're talking 25 cars total and only 10 go to the feature. I mean, me having half of your grid where the most point, over half of the grid, the most points they get is like less than half of the car that finishes and rolls in the feature, I don't necessarily think is a great thing, especially the way the driving standards were and how much of a lottery it was at times to get into the feature race. I don't know. It seems, I think there's potential for teams to abuse that. I think there's potential. I think there needs to be a middle ground there. So it's a red flag for me.
We need to wrap up. So we've got the next one is the stewarding this season. So I think it's been a huge red flag, 50 red flags, 2 penalties all season. There was a Q ban, a qualifying ban for John Robertson. So Q ban, qualifying ban, same thing. Yep. That was for, I mean, rightly deserved anyway. I mean, he obviously turned around Bobby Sant Jr. just to get a transfer spot. But if he got one, there should have been 40 more, which I didn't understand. So that to me was a huge red flag for the series. The race ban for Danny Matrani isn't a stewarding penalty. It's just a form of the rules. He reached a certain amount of penalty points, and no one probably wanted to give that to him, but the rules gave it to him, if that made sense. So technically, there was one penalty in one of a series where driving standards should have been policed more, I think is probably the biggest red flag we could ever discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people cried for live stewarding, but I don't see how live stewarding would have fixed the problem. Because, in the end of the day, the way live stewarding...
Can I say
quickly, the way... Go ahead.
Yeah. It's not that live stewarding would have fixed the issue. It's that live stewarding... Well, I mean, actually, maybe would have fixed the issue. Like, if you just give, let's say, penalize the Atlanta feature race incident. Let's say that's not a racing incident. I can't remember who was at fault, what happened there, but... If there's just one penalty there or a couple penalties there, round 2 would have been a lot cleaner. Like, people would have been careful. But because there weren't penalties coming, people just didn't care to be careful. So it got worse.
Well, what I mean by live stewarding is, like, I know there's a cry for people for whoever was race control to be handing out penalties essentially in the server. And the thing is that I don't think that really would have fixed the problem. Because to me, the problem is that drivers are making contact with one another. So if someone makes contact with one another and then you boot them from the server, it doesn't change the fact that that contact still happened. You're not really fixing the problem. And at the same time, when people are intentionally spinning people and when they're like, there's an incident today with Johan doing a bit of a derp rejoin that he sort of admitted to doing on purpose with a iRacing staff member in our team's channel, which is not the smartest thing I've ever seen anyone do, but Lamau. When people are doing that they're already expecting that they're going to get a poor result anyway. So if you just remove them from a server, they're going to be like, whatever, it's about the end result anyways, especially with the way the points currently work.
Yeah.
But I would love to see more severe stewarding because, especially with the way the format works, there's definitely incentive to move someone or make contact. And
exactly.
I think if an incident is severe enough, I don't think a 2-race ban should be out of the question.
Well, they should have introduced that to some drivers in Formula One, like Pastor Maldonado, for example. But make this a one-word answer, and then we got one more after it. So pre-race interviews with the drivers, green flag or red flag? For you, it's a red flag because you didn't get to speak. For me, it's a green flag because we got a special guest on each week.
Yeah, I liked it. Green flag, definitely.
Yeah. Well, we got to find a way to
less work for me to do.
Say it again?
I said, and it was less work for me to do, so green flag.
Oh, no. Well, okay, fine. It was green flag for both of us. So that was awesome. We had, Steve Arpin. Cabot Bigham did the whole race when you were sick. What did you have? You had a Ebola?
I had super Ebola. I actually grew a 4th limb. But yeah. I think you're right. But no, I just had a sore throat and a cold, and my voice was wrecked.
Cool. So we can confirm he didn't have Ebola. He just had a cold. So ability to select cars was my next story, because to me it seems like there was discussion between iRacing and the drivers as to whether or not they should reset the track state, because the way the track state is designed is it's essentially like if you watch the feature race at the end yesterday, and we spoke about this with Stelian Chepelevsky after the race, those guys like Mitchell DeJong, Bobby Zelensky, Sammy Matty Trogan, when you ride on board with them, it's like they're driving just a tarmac road course almost. It looks that way. And Chepelevsky's someone who's driven rally in the real world. He hasn't driven much rallycross, but he knows that that's not the way it works. I've even spoken to Mitchell behind the scenes. He knows that it's wearing a lot too. But to me, it seems at the end of the day, the Ford Fiesta was the right car to choose because the Fiesta's best in those conditions. So to me, the fact that drivers can't switch cars, I like that rule. But I think if iRacing just sort of it's tough, if next year they come in and they say, okay, we're going to reset the track state now during the races, then Subaru all of a sudden becomes the best car to drive. Like, I don't know, is this a green or red flag story? I think this is both. This is interesting.
I think you should have to pick a car and stick with it.
Yeah.
But I also don't think there should be a one rule fits all for necessarily all the tracks. This is something, this impacted the dirt oval side as well, but all those cars are the same, so it, kind of doesn't matter. But on the dirt oval side, a track can really bear in very, very different ways, where that doesn't seem to be the case on the rallycross side. Like the fast line on a rallycross circuit never really changes clearly, whereas on a dirt oval you can have a top line, you can have a middle line, you can have a bottom line, bumps, and that really doesn't affect the rallycross side.
How do we fix the balance of power issue then? To get all these cars sort of...
I don't necessarily know if there is a fix. Like there's when it comes to BOP in a sim, there's generally going to be a best car if they're physically different. Sort of like if you were to do an F1 league, no one's gonna, on a top tier level, no one's gonna go out there. No one's voluntarily gonna go out there in a Williams.
Hey, the HRT from 2010.
Yeah. So like, it's a difficult thing to, especially with how different these cars are. Like, they don't have the big aero differences that you might see in Formula One cars, but different wheelbases, different power levels, different gearboxes, different. There's a lot of things different from a Ford Fiesta to a Subaru, and trying to BOP that and get it dialed in. I don't know if the Fiesta was a right car to choose, then everyone got it wrong except for Garrett Lowe. But yeah, whether or not the surface is right, I know like I was part of that discussion. That's such a long-winded and such a long example, and that's a whole nother discussion. We're gonna have just talking about that.
Episode 96 of this Simon Racing Report. Why we should change the road.
Still the same topic.
Rallycross. All right, so that's it. Do you have any other stories? Actually, I forgot to ask you. Anything to add?
Obviously the I'd say the talk of the year was the driving standards. It seemed like
red flag.
Yeah, it'd be a big red flag. It seemed like, the problem is that I feel bad for Thrustmaster, if I'm honest. Thrustmaster came in, supported the series, and they sort of hot take. I think they sponsor the worst championship of the 7.
No, well, driving standards wise, not
for the driving standards. For driving standards,
no, exactly. It was a fun championship. Let's not take it away from Rallycross.
The entertainment was good, but I think the entertainment was good for the wrong reason. You monitor the Twitch chats, the YouTube chats, and it seemed like every week people were like, "Lamal, this is the Pro Series, this is the standards," and I know drivers complained about collision models and they've complained about the cars feeling light, but at the end of the day, there was a huge problem, I think, in this championship this year of people running into people at the starts of the races before they ever get on the gravel, before they ever really get into a corner. Like, there was a huge problem of people being over aggressive and like forcing it 4 wide onto these super narrow racetracks and driving into the back of people. And I think there was a huge issue with the driving standards that I'll be honest, if half the grid didn't turn up and we got a cleaner grid next year, then so be it.
Yeah, so this is something I spoke about after the race. I said, you know what, it's tougher in sim race to race rallycross than the real world because of the collision model and the fact that, in sim racing, awareness is tougher, field of view is always harder. You're not there, you're there virtually, you're not there real. So, again, they're not in the best situation, but it's no excuse, obviously, for what happened either. But feel sorry for Thrustmaster? Come on. Thrustmaster, I don't think they're
the reason I feel sorry for Thrustmaster is that I think they kind of got the short stick in terms of championships they chose to support. I thought, yeah, like obviously there weren't, it's just something they had to come in, and we've had issues with companies coming in and supporting some of these championships. I mean, that's kind of why we saw the Grand Prix series go away, is that there was no sort of interest from anyone to really support it. On top of that, with Porsche coming in, of course, this year. But so I mean, for them coming in, supporting the championship the way that they did, getting the prize money up this year, I mean, I don't know. I don't.
Well, here's a better proposition for you. The Simon Racing Report needs a sponsor. So Thrustmaster, if you
$25,000, mate.
$25,000 an episode, Thrustmaster. I'm all for it.
Well, then here's my serious question to you, then, Johnny.
Yeah.
Simon Racing Report. For which series do you think would have been better for you to sponsor to get your brand out there? Rallycross or let's say the Esports Super Cup, Porsche?
Let's say the Simon Racing Report?
Yeah, like ignore money.
Well, obviously, it's the Porsche Esports Super Cup. They had way more viewers. They had thousands more viewers.
Right, exactly.
But what if Thrustmaster can't? Maybe Thrustmaster. Maybe that's exclusive to Porsche. Maybe you can't sponsor.
No. I'm talking in a purely hypothetical point.
Oh
purely
yeah,
hypothetical.
Obviously it's Porsche. I love Rallycross. Like I would sponsor both. That's my answer. I'd love both.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Well,
in this hypothetical world, Johnny just has stacks.
Well, I'll tell you what. I don't get those shoes behind me for free. Let me tell you that much.
Yeah.
So, and the massive logo too. Probably most expensive logo in human history. Let's move on to our post-season awards. This is my favorite part of this podcast because we're going to do this NHL style. So there's going to be awards for literally any fucking thing you can think of right now. So like the NHL, I told you, Randy, like the NHL, I think when I was searching up or Googling the awards, there's like an award for which player took the most shits pre-game. There's like literally anything you can think of right now in the NHL. So first award we're going to do is the MVD, which is the most valuable driver. And this is a tough one to give out because I don't know if we give this out to the 2019 champion. I feel like I want to give this out to Mitchell DeJong over Sammy Matty Trogan.
I mean, it kind of has to be Mitchell, doesn't it? I mean, he's the only driver to win multiple races. No other driver. Everyone else won one. Mitchell won 5. The other 4 were what? It was Heikkinen, Trogan,
Taskinen,
and Hart. So, I mean, he won 5 of 9 races. But in reality, that's 5 of 7 races because he missed 2.
He missed, yeah.
And he's
correct.
He was the only driver at the end of the season within a full race points, full race 84 points within Sammy Matty Trogan. And he raced 2 less weeks than pretty much anyone else in the championship inside of the top 10. I don't think it's even a hard decision. It has to be.
Yeah. So again, most valuable driver is not the champion or anything like that. It's the most valuable driver. So who's the driver that if you had to begin this season and it was a perfect season again for 2020, you'd pick Mitchell DeJong over any other driver. Yeah. So
Sammy was easily second though.
Sorry, say it again.
I said Sammy's if you had to rule out Mitchell, Sammy's the second choice,
yeah.
like no one else.
Sammy Matty Trogan was ever so impressive. I mean, he would have had most of those feature race victories if it wasn't for DeJong at some of the rounds. The next award is the Mitchell DeJong Trophy, which goes to the driver
who win, Mitchell.
The driver who won the most feature races this season, and that's going to go to Mitchell DeJong, who won 5 feature races. Yes.
Mitchell's about to sweep these fucking rewards the way he swept the series, damn near.
Yeah, I know. Well done, Mitchell DeJong. Can we look it out? So with the driver survey at the beginning of the season, everyone thought 45% of drivers voted Mitchell DeJong to become the champion. Do you remember who was second or third? Or have you already looked at the graphic, actually?
Hold on, I misplaced the graphic.
Okay, good. But then don't look at the graphic. So tell me, Johan Harth was second. Who was third?
For what again? I'm sorry.
For who was going to win the 2019 championship?
I mean, Mitchell easily was probably the favorite.
Mitchell was first. Johan Harth was second. Who was third?
John Robertson, perhaps?
Yes. So, obviously the best Pro Series driver. Remember, Sammy Matty Trogan wasn't in the Pro Series. He had a wildcard entry. So
Scott speeded in, didn't he?
Yeah.
It's actually what's crazy about. We didn't talk about this at all year.
Yeah.
What's crazy about this season is that this is the only championship I'm aware of that a wild card entry has been used. It's been used back-to-back years. In the first year, it was probably the worst possible experience iRacing could have asked for. In the second year, the driver won the championship.
Wow. Controversial. See, it's an entertaining series. Rallycross is going to be awesome in 2020.
Oh, I never said it wasn't entertaining.
Yeah, Real Housewives of Rallycross. That would be a nice show. Yeah, feature race winners, of course. Mitchell won 5. Sammy Matty Trogan obviously won the opening round of the season, which I called at the time the youngest winner in history, which technically he was because Garrett Lowe has never sent me his birth date. So then I found out Garrett Lowe was younger than Sammy Matty Trogan. So I did not get that wrong, ladies and gentlemen. Get fucked. Next one is Johan Hart. Third, I'm choking now. Johan Hart for round 3. Otto Taskinen, impressive one. Thank God Joni Heikkinen won a feature race because he deserved one.
I don't understand how Joni didn't edge out Robertson in that pick in the votes for the championship.
Yeah, I was surprised too. He was.
I shot Shirley coming off of last year. I would have gone first Mitchell, then Joni, then maybe Johan.
Yeah, he ended up 4th in the votes with Josh Fox and Stelian Chepelevsky. Chepelevsky has the potential to, if he really commits himself, can win races, of course, and all that, but he obviously had a very poor season. The next award, very interesting one. The most improved driver. So technically the driver who was deemed to have a breakout year.
Are you doing these out of order? When we went down them earlier, I had them in a different order. I don't know if you're skipping one or...
Oh, if I'm sticking to the... Okay, so no, I'm not. I shuffled the order around after I send them to you.
Okay,
so
that's fine.
Most improved drivers next. Yeah. It'll either be, to me, when you look at the votes preseason, Johan Hart had 52% of the votes. I still think he's the most improved driver this year,
I think you're probably right. He was sort of a solid mid-pack guy last year, but I think he was one of the best qualifiers this year. He had some issues in races, obviously. I mean, in the second half of the season, he went from being the championship leader to being 6th by the end of it. But yeah, I think definitely his pace in qualifying. Definitely still some bugs he has to get out of the system. But yeah, I think Johan's probably a pretty clear guess. Maybe even Bobby Zelensky. Bobby was really good this year as well, and I don't think was he even in the series last year? I know that there were a couple of cars.
Bobby was there.
Yeah, that's right. So Bobby, I think, is another one that I think would be a very good choice. I think those are the 2 clear-cut options. I'm going
to officially give the award now because I have all say as the host of this podcast.
Yeah.
And it's going to go to Johan Hart, which I think we agreed on. But Bobby Zelensky's still up there. Very impressive season. Definitely performed much better than he did last year, 100%. So well done to him. Logan Clampett was voted 3rd preseason to have a breakout year. I actually think Logan Clampett dropped off this season compared to last year, and it's I think he would agree with that too. A lot of incidents involved for Logan Clampett. Some of them.
Nathan Lyon's another one I thought probably I was expecting to do better.
The next award, and remember I've shuffled these around, so sorry about that, but is the Rookie of the Year. So the best newcomer, and the votes by the drivers during the preseason were John Robertson on 50%. He's not going to win it from me. Second in the votes was Sammy Matty Trogan. And when I saw him get all these votes, I was like, are these his Finnish friends just trying to give him votes because I like him? Or is he actually going to be quick? And then people started messaging me going, you know what, this guy is, really quick. You should look at him. Man, I made some fake betting odds for the championship. He was worse than 40-1 to win the championship, Randy. I should have put my whole house on him.
I mean, I don't know if I would have, as someone who does have the gambling itch, I don't know if I would have done that. It's hard. I mean, obviously, you can't give it to John during a rookie won the championship. It has to be Sammy Matty Trogan. But
the champion.
It turns out winning the championship really boosts your likelihood of winning Rookie of the Year, believe it or not.
Notable mentions though go to Otto Taskinen, of course.
Yep.
John Robertson, he gets a notable mention. He did really well.
Yeah, he definitely didn't do bad. Definitely, it wasn't the worst. I mean, he was the second best of the Apex drivers.
But you see what hype does? Like if John Robertson
Yeah.
ended up tanking the Pro Series and finished like, 10th or whatever the
He kind of
final
got
position
Bono
was.
house, didn't he? Because I remember when Bono came to the GPS and the
He was-
Blancpain
yeah.
Championship. Yeah, there was all this enormous hype, and he just sort of was, running top 10, top 15.
But-
sort of a similar situation.
No, but Bono Haas, I think, was on the podium every race that season or something, and it was like a disappointing season for him. Like, it was so weird. And I was like, wait a second, this is one of the best rookie series of all time, like rookie seasons of ever. But it's sometimes
People were
hype, so-
expecting him to come in and just wipe Gregor all over the floor. And
Yeah.
Martin
But I
looked
do
like a
also
nub.
blame, like with Bono Haas, and not to go too off topic, but I think he is still the best. Like in R Factor, you put him in R Factor, he's the best driver in the world, I reckon, or something.
Probably.
Maybe, on the right day, Morgan Moran could probably have him when Morgan Moran was in his prime, but Bono Haas was awesome. Tommy Hallman, let's not forget him as well. Another notable mention. Tommy Hallman had a good season. So those are our Rookie of the Years. Now we go to the fun named awards. That was very poorly phrased in English. But this is the Garrett Lowe Award. So this goes to the most memorable moment of the season. Obviously named after Garrett Lowe's Iowa moment from last year because he won that award. So I've got two here for you, Randy, and you feel free to vote or feel free to add in a third one. There's the Sammy Matty Trogan debut performance, had a hat trick in his first ever race of his career. Or Otto Taskanen's win at Lucas Oil. He was gifted that Heat 1 win, remember?
Yep.
When the seas basically parted ahead of him, when Zelensky and Hart had contact at the jump, Clampett involved, Taskanen wins the heat, ends up winning the feature. Any other ones, or are you going to vote between those two?
Taskanen was going to be my pick for sure because that win was really impressive. I mean, he kind of, like you said, he kind of got the freebie. And I think we were all expecting him to go into the feature, and honestly, someone would jump him through Joker strategy. But I mean, that's sort of the right track to, if you want to get gifted pole and be able to hold on to the lead. That Joker is very difficult to make passes with. Yeah, I think that has to be. I mean, that's certainly the closest to the Garrett Lowe win at Iowa. I think. In terms of, I think that's probably the most surprising victory of the year.
Yeah.
I'd argue if you were to at the start of the year come up with, say, 5 or 6 names for people you would expect to win races, I don't think Otto would be on the list.
Well, I mean, when you look at the betting markets I created, I had, and even the votes last year, Taskanen got a few votes, but I put up for feature race winners, there was DeJong, Heikkinen for sure.
Yep.
I'm probably going to name the names out. Hearth was another one. Josh Fox, he didn't actually win one this season, but Josh Fox, I think, could have won. Chepelevsky was in the betting markets. I'm looking at the list. John Robertson, Zelensky, Clampett, Garrett Lowe, Nathan Lyon, Michael Guest. Goodness, Michael Guest, Jesus. And
F.
we didn't even have Otto Taskanen on there. Not even like Danny Matrani was on there, his teammate. So that was not even Sammy Matty Trogan. So that was a tough one. I mean, do you remember, Randy, during the broadcast, I ended up saying I drove for Positive Sim Racing? Did I tell you that, by the way, everybody?
Yeah, you mentioned it about 1 billion times.
Claim to fame.
Paul
Yeah.
Smith.
Claim to fame. Claim to fame. And then next race, let's say I was thinking, what if next race Positive Sim Racing caused the feature race pileup with 10 cars? Would have been like, you know what, Randy, I've never driven for Positive Sim Racing before. That's a very bad accident.
Or you would have been like, they were never like this when I raced for them.
Yeah. Well, let's revisit the Otto Taskanen win because it was a good one. And they've done so legally. And it looks like Zelensky, I've never seen a pass into the jump here. Oh, and he's made contact with Hearth. What's happened here? He's taken out Hearth completely. Hearth comes back into Clampett, and that's going to give Taskanen the lead. This is crazy.
What in the world did we just see? Otto Taskanen is going to get a freebie. Now the question is, the race is on for second, and it looks like it's Logan Clampett fighting with Matthew Madigan trying to sort it out.
Yep, Trogan through to the Joker. Now let's see if he claims 4th position. He does. That demotes Danny Matrani to 5th, but it doesn't matter for Positive Sim Racing because this 25-year-old Finnish driver of Otto Taskanen. Now, I drove for Positive Sim Racing in 2014, and I have to say, I can't contain my excitement. It's great to see the team and Javier Alvarez, team owner. They'll celebrate this for years to come. Otto Taskanen wins round 4 from Lucas Oil Raceway. So the team of the season, VRS Coanda Sim Sport is one of the nominees.
Yep.
Set Esports another. Positive Sim Racing's another one. And this is controversial for you, but I'm going to add in Apex Racing Team Subaru Winter Experience in there. Let's cross off a team first.
Apex.
Apex for sure. So then it's down to
Apex.
3 now. Are we crossing off Positive Sim Racing next?
I think you have to.
So then
Hold on. Was there? This is gonna be my first thing of which team had the most feature race appearances, and Apex is automatically ruled out because I know that there was at least 1 or 2 races that none of the Apex cars made it.
But the problem with that is the more drivers you have, obviously. Like Set has 3 drivers compared to Coanda's 2. So that's where it's difficult.
Right. But there was a Coanda driver in every feature race.
Yes, true. Up to round 9. Yeah, but then Apex, like, well, I mean, 1 round, you know.
Yeah, but that's one of the things. So they had 3 drivers and they couldn't make the Atlanta feature when but I mean, I'm just sort of, you said I'm just spitballing here. I'm trying to think how many events did Positive Sim Racing not make the feature? I think there was more. There was definitely at least a couple.
Well, round
early
one,
in they kind of got a slow start to the season. Yeah, they got a slow start to this. They were pretty consistently in the mains by about week 4, week 5. It felt like.
I think they were in every. Let me just look at round 5 quickly. So they missed the feature at Phoenix round 5, even though Otto Taskinen and Matrani almost had a 1-2 at the Lucas Oil round for round 4,
Right.
and that was it. So they were at every other feature race that season. But I mean, Positive Sim Racing is like a third for me, 3rd or 4th. Like they're tied with Apex.
Yeah, I think you're right.
You know, Apex still had a decent year when it comes to qualifying. The pace I think was very good. So I think Positive and Apex battle for that final podium position. I can't choose a team of the season like between Coanda and Set. That they were both insanely.
I mean,
can we give a team of the season?
It's yeah. I mean, it's hard to pick. I mean, you could make the argument. Well, Mitchell won 5 of 9 races, but I've always been someone when it comes to one of these championships that can't overvalue the performance of a single driver. Like I thought for long years, like especially in the later years of the World Championship Grand Prix series, even though Gregor for a number of the years was the best driver in that series. Yeah. I don't think Team Redline was the best team, especially kind of later on with Coanda. I thought Coanda was kind of easily the best team. And that's really hard to say. Set Esports did very good, and honestly, I think the question might come down to is of the 3 drivers, do the likes of Tony Heikkinen and Tommy Hallman, do they outweigh Bobby Zelensky? That's sort of the matchup you have. I think Set Esports team of the season. Done.
We're going to crown someone. We're going to give it to both. I'm going to give it to both. I can't choose. And the reason why Josh Fox isn't in this is because he's not a team. He's one person. It's Williams Esports. So we're invalidating that as a team. Same for
Lowe and Bro and NX.
Yeah. But I can't choose. Co-award. I can't be bothered dealing with it. So we're going to give it to both of them. Coanda, Set, congratulations. You win the team of the season. Co-team of the season. How about they merge up and dominate? No, don't do that. So, Consistency Award, which I spent, I think, utmost of 15 minutes trying to come up with a name with. That's a lie. Probably 10 seconds. And it goes to the most consistent driver of the season. I've got a couple of nominees for you again.
Yep.
Mitchell DeJong.
Clear winner. But
I agree. But
keep
let's
bringing
go
him.
The rest. just to argue. We should have named him last. That was my fault.
Yeah.
So
build up the hype. Are they not going to put Mitchell in this?
Sammy Matty Trogan's another.
Yeah.
Which I don't agree with because he did have some major mistakes, especially through the mid part of the season. Josh Fox, who I think I wrote down his name before his handbrake caused him the worst start in human history at Sonoma. And I'm thinking another one was Bobby Zelensky. But Bobby Zelensky was involved in a lot of incidents too.
Yeah.
So this goes to Mitchell DeJong. Let's not waste our time.
Yeah, Mitchell's definitely the clear winner. I mean, the only reason he didn't make a feature is because he was nearly winning World Fastest Gamer.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And he also had 0 incident points the whole season.
Yeah, not a thing. And that's not like Johnny mentioned earlier that a driver got a penalty for like a behind the scenes way they do stewarding with incident points. No, like we're talking 1X's.
Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely the cleanest driver of all. Sammy, I think Sammy has to be the number 2, I think, right? I think he's the only other driver I think that made every feature. Is there someone else who made every feature? I don't think there was.
No, exactly. You're right. So there were other drivers who missed out. But I mean, after Sammy Trogan brake checked his teammate at Lucas Oil, I'm not sure I want to give anything to him in terms of consistency. So sorry, Sammy Matty. I love you.
To be fair, there weren't a lot of people that were consistent all year, especially consistently good. There were a handful of people that were consistently bad. But outside of Mitchell, it's kind of hard to name a name.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Mitchell wins the award. So the next award then...
The rest of you, fuck off.
Is the most impressive performance of 2019. I've got 3 nominees for you now. We're going to bring up the Sammy Trogan debut hat trick at Atlanta again for round 1. You've got the Josh Fox Sonoma comeback in round 3. Remember, he stalled. He had his handbrake engaged at the start during the heats, I think. Right. Came back through. You even said, and you admitted to being wrong during the broadcast. You said you thought Josh Fox had no chance. By the end of the first lap, he was like in a transfer spot. So Josh Fox claws back, and I think I'm just going to have a look where he finished here. He finished 4th in the feature after stalling in the heat and was in last place. Or the final one is Mitchell DeJong almost clawing back to win the championship after missing 2 rounds. It's a tough one.
It's hard to not just give it to Mitchell again.
But it's boring to give it to Mitchell. He's won everything.
Yeah, I know. That's the other thing. Sammy's debut performance was definitely good. But I think Josh Fox's, in terms of like especially a single event, I think was probably him bouncing back from the LCQ, then get a top 5 in that feature. And that was a drama-filled event, not just feature race, but that was the race that consisted of a camera angle going into the jump that had all the cars, and then it cut to the landing shot, and only one car came up and over the top, which we laughed about in production later. But yeah, I think Josh Fox's performance there at Sonoma, it has to get the vote from me, not only because it was impressive, but because I said he had no chance of making the main event, and then he did.
Yeah, that feature race start was like, oh, here's Johan Harth, and there's no one behind. Where's everyone behind? Yeah. And then there was Bobby Sant Jr. in the background, took the Joker on the opening lap.
Yeah, he like yoinked it, and then he realized he screwed up, and we thought he was in the top 5, but he wasn't. But yeah, I think Josh is. I mean, the thing that's funny about Mitchell is that like in a vacuum, Mitchell's wins typically aren't like super impressive. He kind of just like is the fastest all day, which is impressive. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
they're like Sebastian Vettel wins, or sometimes Lewis Hamilton wins. There's never a point where it feels like, especially this year, he didn't really have to claw out a close victory, did he? He kind of just like had a comfortable enough margin. Granted, he had to drive really good. Don't get me wrong, but there's never like I wouldn't say there was a Mitchell win that was like the moment of the season.
Well, anyway, let's Mitchell again, impressive performance, Mitchell. But we're not giving you this award because we're the media and we're biased. It's not a video game.
Yep.
So we're gonna do it like the NBA do and give it to what we want to give it to, and that's the Josh Fox round 3 Sonoma comeback, which we're gonna view right now. Oh, one driver didn't get off the line at all. I think that's Josh Fox. Josh Fox has stalled. Issues for the Williams Esports driver. But into the first corner now, Robertson leads. Holman's also had a poor getaway in that set Esports car. Andrea Perez in the VW.
Yeah, but look at all the names we have in here. I'd say of all the names we've seen, Maines looked like he was quick enough to transfer. Hallman, I don't think Josh Fox transfers out of this C main. I think he's going home after this.
And it's going to be a drag race to turn 1. It looks like Zelensky has the lead over Hallman. Josh Fox with a good getaway.
Yeah, he might make me eat my words here. He's already up to P3. Lurking behind him is going to be Michael Guest in fourth. And then Garrett Maines, who's your pole sitter, gets shuffled all the way back to P5. And he gets into the back of Michael Guest, who I think got a slowdown going up the hill and quickly got out of the way. But now Zelensky and Hallman will fight for the lead. And Hallman, what a move around the outside of the Californian to Zelensky. Something's wrong with Bobby. I think he's got a slowdown.
Yeah, he got a slowdown. He hit the first cone in the carousel, and he tried to get rid of it. If you cut the track, you have to slow down a certain amount given to you locally.
And Josh Fox! Josh Fox at the inside of Tommy Hallman for the race lead up the carousel. My apologies for doubting you, Josh Fox. He goes into the race lead.
I looked down and thought Josh Fox was going to stay in second through the carousel. I look up, and he's in first, Randy, within a second. Phil Diaz, he's not going to make it, unfortunately. Phil Diaz gave it all, though. And we're going to say goodbye to him for round 3, although he drove quite splendidly here in the consolation race. Fox and Hallman through to the feature. So best qualifier now for the season. I'm going to give the award to Johan Harth. He had 4 poles to his name. Mitchell DeJong had 3, and then the other 2 poles, one went to Sammy Matty Trogan, the other went to Josh Fox. Impressive by Josh Fox, actually, to grab that pole. But I was thinking, should I give this to Johan Harth? You know, his qualifying dropped off towards the end of the year. I think a motivated Johan Harth, you know, towards the end of the year could have even snatched a couple poles from Mitchell DeJong.
Yeah, perhaps. But I don't know. It's hard not to, you know, obviously we're trying to set a trend here of not just giving it to Mitchell. But it's hard not to give the best qualifying award to the person who had the most pole positions all year. Had, you know, you got to remember, he only was there for 7 rounds and he had 4 poles. So there's only 3 appearances and Mitchell didn't start at the head of the field in qualifying. Yeah, it's really hard to say. You know, the question has to be is, did Johan pick up a couple of those poles when Mitchell was absent?
Well, let's have a look. Yes, Sonoma, Johan had a pole. Remember, he had the hat trick there.
Yeah.
Which I think Johan would have still had the pole anyway. And yes, Johan grabbed the other pole at Lucas Oil.
So 2 of the 3 poles he had, Mitchell was absent.
But he also, but then Mitchell, like round 5 Phoenix, Johan out-qualified Mitchell. Mitchell qualified second. Johan had pole. And then Sonoma again. Johan was ever so quick. Mitchell actually qualified 6th. So again, I don't want to, I think you give it to Johan. You know, he had the most poles. He should deserve the award.
Oh, Mitchell, I thought Mitchell had the most poles, we said.
No. Johan had 4. Mitchell had 3.
Oh, okay. Then give it to Johan.
Yeah. I reckon if Mitchell had more poles, we'd obviously give it to him. But I think we give that to Johan Harth. Next award we're going to do is, I'm going to change it up a little bit here. We're going to do the underrated driver of the year now, which when I asked Bobby Zelensky post-race in the interview, I don't know, just seemed to dislike when I asked him that. Like, why do you think everyone thinks you're underrated? Well, because he's, you know why? He hasn't won a feature race. I think Bobby Zelensky is one of the best drivers on the grid. If he has a feature race win to his name, all of a sudden he's not underrated anymore.
Yeah. Bobby's a pretty clear choice. Tommy Hallman, I think, is another one. He didn't have the sort of consistency the likes of Trogan and Heikkinen did. But honestly, I think Hallman is a faster driver than Bobby in the Rallycross side. He just wasn't as consistent. And I think if he cleaned himself up, got into less incidents, maybe qualified a little better, I think Hallman will be if this championship goes on for a long period of time, I think it'd be a very competitive driver, potentially a championship contending driver. I think Garrett Lowe is another one. I mean, Garrett Lowe, the thing of all year with Garrett is that he was the only person in that Fiesta. So even if he had people he was testing with, there was very little data sharing that could have gone on. And I think, look at the other kind of solo effort that did really well in the top 10 in the points. You have Josh Fox. I think if you had to pick those 2 names, I think Garrett probably would be the one people would underrate.
Mm-hmm.
I think those 3 are probably the clear choices.
Josh Fox is up there for me. I like.
And honestly, coming into the season, Joni Heikkinen. You mentioned how your championship favorite choices and whatnot. Like people were, it was like Mitchell, and then people were circle jerking about John Robertson, and then people were hyped up on Stilly and Chepelevsky. It's like for some reason everyone, no one talked about the fact that the person who was closest in competition with Mitchell last year might be a favorite to win the championship, and that feels weird. Second in the points last year and a third this year. Joni Heikkinen, I think, has to be up there with one of the most underrated drivers this year.
I think with that award, I can't remember how the survey worked, but when the drivers had to vote for the champion, they were only allowed one pick, I think. But then when you look at who was voted to be a feature race winner, Joni Heikkinen was voted a feature race winner up there. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's looked underrated because when people thought of the champion, they couldn't really pick him because they saw DeJong beat him last year. But then you had other people thinking, okay, I don't think it's going to be DeJong. I think it's going to be these guys. They weren't thinking Heikkinen. I don't know. Fuck.
But by that logic, surely the same person will win a championship every year. Just because you get beat one year doesn't mean you can't win next year later on.
Exactly. Well, let's hope
still Juan Manuel Fangio would still be racking up F1 championships if that was how it went.
Juan Manuel Fangio wins his 17th World Championship. No, that's not going to happen. So I can see what's the award we're doing right now? Underrated driver.
Underrated driver.
Yeah, so look, for Heikkinen, unless his career keeps turning out to be like Mikko Hirvonen, I don't think he's going to win a championship. But I think he's got the potential to. So let's hope. No, sorry, I phrased that wrong. I think he can win a championship, but if it turns out to be like Mikko Hirvonen, I mean, Mikko Hirvonen never won a championship. So Heikkinen's got to step up his game, and if he didn't get off to such a slow start this year, Heikkinen could have been up there, to be honest with you. He the early half of the season, I was like, man, he's having an abysmal start. And then he finished third in the standings. He's one of my favorite drivers on the grid, for sure. I love watching him. So I'm rooting for the young man, and let's see where his real world career takes off. But for me, I'm going to give underrated driver out to Bobby Zalenski. Let's confirm it. Bobby Zalenski wins that for me. So the next one is going to be my favorite one. No, actually, second favorite award. It's the Sacre Bleu Trophy. I can't even pronounce that, but I'm just going to say it as best as I can. And it goes to the best, worst moment of the year. So what this means is it's a terrible moment of the season, but it's also something that's I forgot the word. There's a word that defines this all, but it's like the best, worst moment. So what's exciting, but what's been the worst moment? So hard to explain. But here are the nominees. There was the feature race start to round 1 at Atlanta. That's one. Kevin Carlisle's pirouetting across the jump at Lucas Oil. I think it was in the same heat where Johan Hart and Bobby Zalenski collided. Right. Kevin Carlisle just doing like ballet stuff. I don't think that's going to win it. You've got Bobby Sant Jr. taking the Joker on the opening lap at Sonoma when you're not allowed to. Then you've got, and same race as Kevin Carlisle above, you've got the Hearth versus Zelensky battle where even Logan Clampett was involved. Hearth ended up getting on his roof. It wasn't on the broadcast, but he ended up being flipped on his roof. Taskinen lucked out at the end of the day. Then you've got back to round 4 at Lucas Oil. Sammy Matty Trogan brake checking his
What's
teeth.
going on at Lucas Oil? Like all of these, it's like one guy accidentally taking the Joker a lap too early, and then it's just Lucas Oil.
Then there's another one. Yeah, so this one's from Lucas Oil. Sammy Matty Trogan, I think in the feature, brake checking his teammate to take a slowdown penalty. Yeah. You have John Robertson's qualifying ban at Phoenix. Yeah. Well, he had the incident at Phoenix. That was his only penalty. And keep track of this, ladies and gentlemen. There's like a million here to look out for. And the final one is Johan Hart's tire blunders, hitting the bollard. So there was the feature race where he hit the bollard, and that was the race you didn't commentate on, actually, but Johan Hart hit the tire stack. Mm-hmm. And it happened again at Atlanta for the final round, which was netcode for the final round. Yeah. But the other round wasn't. So which one of those 50 million are we going to choose to win the Sacre Bleu Trophy?
Like I said, as many as were listed in it, it's hard to not just choose that one heat race from Indianapolis Raceway Park at Lucas Oil.
But Bobby said,
but I'll be honest. Yeah, I was about to say that. To be honest, you could kind of expand on that to the entire start of that feature at Sonoma. It's even though Bobby Sant Jr. is the one we picked, we mentioned it earlier, and it's the one I think if you, me, and Paul got on the team when we hung out, eventually one of us would joke about that camera shot where you had all the cars going into the jump. It cuts to like the low shot near the landing where you can't see over it. You're supposed to see the cars flying in the air. And of the 9-10 cars you're expecting to come through, you only see one. Like I think that entire moment it would be it for me, not just Bobby St. Jr. not taking the Joker. Or trying to take the Joker a lap too early. I mean, that one's more of like an individual blooper. Like to me, that's the defined individual blooper of the season. Them trying to go to the Joker a lap early.
All right. Well, then on that note, let's award it to the entire Sonoma feature race grid for round 3.
Fine with me.
And Bobby Sant Jr. gets the 50% cut of the prize money. Everybody else gets, what?
The other 50%.
9 divided by 50. I can't be bothered doing the math. But, and that prize money, Randy, is $0. So they can share it all together. And we're going to look at that feature race start right here. And we go green from Sonoma for the final time. Oh, a bit of contact through the first corner between, I think that was Taskinen and Robertson, or Taskinen and Trogan. Trogan almost turned around. He is! Sammy Matty Trogan misses a jump. Taskinen's on 2 wheels in the wall. Oh, and this is carnage already into the first few corners, but Johan Harth leads so far. The hat tricks this year went to Sammy Matty Trogan. How about that? By the way, for those that don't know what a hat trick is in Rallycross, it's when you qualify on pole, you win the heat, and then you win the feature. So you basically clean sweep all the races you're in. And Sammy Matty Trogan did that in his debut race. Johan Harth did it again from Sonoma, which is a track synonymous with hat tricks. Every event except one has had a hat trick there. Mitchell DeJong did it at Iowa for round 6. And then Mitchell DeJong did it from Atlanta, another track where we visited twice in the World Championship this season. Both had a hat trick. So there are the 4 hat tricks that occurred this season. And if I look at last season's hat tricks, Joni Heikkinen had a couple. Mitchell DeJong had the only other ones. So we had... How much is this? We had 4 this year, 5 last year. But remember, we had more rounds last year.
Right. I was going to ask you this. Weren't the results of the Atlanta races kind of flip-flopped? Like, didn't week 1, it was sort of Sammy had pole, 1 heat 1, and started on pole, won the feature. Didn't it? Whereas Mitchell, second, 1 heat, and finished second in the... Didn't that go backwards then when we went to Atlanta short for the second time, where it was Mitchell who did the hat trick? And then Sammy, who qualified second. So that's actually kind of interesting.
Mitchell qualified 6th for round 1. Don't forget.
Oh, did he qualify? Oh, I thought he qualified second. My bad.
No, so
that's
I know. Actually, Randy,
confirmed.
sorry, on my spreadsheet, let me just put in a 2. It says Mitchell qualified second now.
Yeah, fucking solid stats.
Yeah, Mitchell qualified second. Johan Harth, you can qualify 6th now, not second anymore for round 1. Yeah, no, but I know what you're saying. It's unfortunately that would have been a very good thing to mention on this podcast, but by a poor qualifying performance from Mitchell,
by virtue of being a fact, we can't talk about it.
Yeah, blame Mitchell for that. Then we're going to so this award is to the leader of the year, and this is to the driver that shows the best leadership qualities to their team. Now remember, ladies and gentlemen, these are prop awards, so these are not taken seriously. And I'm going to give this to Stelian Chepelevsky because when Johan Harth won the feature race at Sonoma, we all had a chat after the race, obviously on TeamSpeak. We all just had a little bit of a party. The broadcast concluded. And I asked Johan, like, what, are you going to get drunk, go to some French clubs or something like that? And then Cheppy said, no, Johnny, he has to go to sleep early tonight. He has to be up early in the morning tomorrow and then practice for next round, for round 4. That speech there won it for me. Best leader, Stelian Chepelevsky.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I know that you're a little bit more involved with the inner workings of some of the team than I am. Stelian's definitely a good choice. I will say a lot of the team managers we talked to definitely like they could apply for this award with the way that they talked about their drivers. But I think if it's going to be a driver, I think Stelian's the clear-cut victor there.
Yep, Stelian is up there. That speech won it for him for sure. And now, Randy, I'm not going to add a drum roll sound effect into this, but the best award of the entire podcast, saved till last. The one I've been looking forward to now for almost 3 months to award. and that's the Mierda de Toro. And that is to the driver. In Spanish, that means the shit of the bull.
Yeah.
And that's to the driver who managed to roll or flip onto their roof the most in 2019. Do you want to have a guess who this could be?
I think it's Stilian Chepelevsky.
Okay. We'll hype it up. We'll leave the winner till last this time, not like some of our other awards. So each on one time. Now, there can be a margin of error in these. I've tried to be as accurate as possible. These are drivers who have flipped or rolled onto their side or roof. Maybe, let's say on their roof, just to make sure, at least once. Matthew Madigan, Johan Harth, Otto Taskinen, Adria Perez, Cedric Gesmeyer, Josh Fox, Danny Matrani, and Yorgi Zadzon. They round out the podium. They're in third place, all tied. Do you want to have a guess who's second?
Well, I was going to say, it's crazy that some of those names are only, like, they only got it once. Some of those names are names that, like, did some of the worst all year. Like Cedric, only there for 5 races, only had 12 points in 21st. Matt Madigan, 8 points. Georgie, 17. Like, you'd expect, like those people who only did it once, like, most of them to be further up the order. Like, Johan's not a surprise to only do it once. But, so the next play, so run down those names again, I'm sorry. So, Georgi, Cedric.
So it's Zadzon, Matrani, Fox, Gesmeyer, Perez, Taskinen, Harth, Madigan. Who's second, though? They all had one. All those drivers they were all on their roof at least once. There's another driver in second, and then we have a winner to crown.
So how many did they have? 2 or 3?
They had 2.
They had 2. I'm going to guess Hunter Parisi.
It was Garrett Maines.
That was close.
He did it yesterday. You should have narrowed it out.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. So Garrett Maines was in the Phoenix Constellation races for round 5 and yesterday.
Well, I wasn't there for that one.
Say it again?
Well, I wasn't there for that one. So.
Well, that's your fault. So
yeah,
Garrett Maines
is not my fault I got sick.
Is second. And the winner of the Mierda de Toro, the Bullshit Award for 2019 for the Simon Racing Report Season Review IRX show, goes to Stelian Chepelevsky with 3 times this season on his roof in 2019.
And he wanted to win this award.
I think he did come on. The first thing he said when he came on post-broadcast yesterday was, "Johnny, I think I won your award." Didn't even say hi. That was awesome. And I didn't want to ruin it, but yes, he did win my award, and we can confirm it here. So he was on his roof. Remember when it was the Lucas Oil feature, and he was just shoved out of the way, like someone just threw rubbish at the side of the road? So that was one of them. Then there was the Sonoma Constellation race. He ended up on his roof. And yesterday at Atlanta at the Constellation race, when I saw him flip, I was like, fuck yeah, we got a winner. I was like, yes. I was so happy. I'm like, I don't have to give this award to 8 different people. I was like, yeah, Chepelevsky's going to win. So, Stelian Chepelevsky, you win the Shit of the Bull Award. We're not going to give you, a pile of shit in eBay or something like that.
Does he get a bull? Does he get do you have a bull that you can mail to him?
We'll shape it as like, those new iPhones now. I don't know if you've got one or you've seen them, but
are you saying they're shaped like a piece of shit?
No, you can talk like through the
Apple
phone.
not sponsoring the Simone Racing Report anytime soon.
No, but like on the new iPhone, there's like an app. I don't know what it is, and you can like talk through the phone and send a message to someone as the pile of shit emoji, and there's eyes on it and stuff. Have you seen that?
That is the peak of human evolution and technology.
Well, maybe I should send an award with that. Just have Cheppy. He would love it, man. Like Cheppy.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Cheppy, we love you. We do. But it's an award I'm glad he will remember until death do us part.
Not if he's suffering concussions from all these fucking rollovers, mate. He's not gonna remember anything.
So let's count
there like
these.
An offensive lineman with CET.
So technically on my list, there are 13 there that I see. 13 moments where drivers were on their roof, and let's revisit all of those now. Who's going to take turn 1? Perez yet again is almost on his roof.
Round.
Oh, cars around already into the final corner. Chepelevsky on his roof. Matrani's on his roof. How is Daniel Matrani almost on his roof right now? Here's a replay. He lost that all on his own. Oh, that's just bizarre.
Oh my goodness, I couldn't even imagine that.
Oh man, we can laugh because it's virtual.
Oh, and they're going to be 4 wide. This isn't going to work. It's only about 2 wide getting into the infield.
And that was Chepelevsky just thrown off out of the racetrack like he was discarded rubbish. Oh, and this is carnage already into the first few corners. Now, predictions for the future. I'm thinking Rallycross will be back for 2020 for sure. I'm really hoping.
Fingers
There'll
crossed.
be more real world team involvement, I hope too. But what else? I mean, anything else to predict for 2020?
Hopefully, I predict some more strict stewarding. I think is something
Yes.
we might come to expect. I think what they did this year is I think they tried to sort of steward all the races, all their series, kind of this, all the world championships. Some of them they were pretty involved in.
Were you involved
ahead.
in every dirt oval world championship this season?
I broadcasted at least once every world championship.
Oh, really? Even Porsche?
Yeah, I did. I had to stand in and at the Montreal race. Both Connery and Will had to be absent, and I stood in for that.
Where was
I was like
why
a-
couldn't
I was like a-
stand in for that. I didn't.
That
know
was like
about that.
a last second thing, I think.
All right.
Yeah, so I only did that one round. I did VRS because I didn't do all of it because once I got busy, like you said, I was involved with all the dirt oval series.
Yeah.
I was involved with this, of course, but once we got into sort of the busy part of the season, VRS, those were like 5 a.m. wake ups. I mean, I got to wake up at 5 a.m. for a race here coming up tomorrow, so that's not going to be fun. But
yeah, we better wrap up.
Yep.
Um.
I won't sleep. Don't worry.
Well, now you get to suffer through what I did for 9 weeks. Well, actually 8 weeks because the final round I was
Well, you were doing 1 hour broadcast. This one's a 6-hour race.
Yeah, true. Good point. The problem for me is all the races this season were what? They began at 5 a.m. and I think 3 of the rounds, so every round I stayed up all night until like 7 a.m. But 2 of the rounds I slept maybe 3 hours, did the broadcast, went back to sleep.
Right.
Some rounds we had Pro Mazda, which was even tougher
Yep.
for Pro Mazda. But then what I did for the last round was I just got back for a few days holiday, got back on the Saturday and thought, you know what? No parties tonight, nothing scheduled. I'm going to sleep at like 10 p.m. 10 p.m. Saturday night, go to sleep, wake up at, I think, 4 a.m. I woke up. I was like, man, I got a good 6 hours before this. It was awesome. And then I felt so fresh for the broadcast. I can't do broadcast waking up because it takes me like 2 hours to wake up my voice. I need to have like a shower before a broadcast.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar. I'm very much not a morning person. That's why doing all this Euro stuff, especially this time of year. It's one of the reasons I don't do Neo anymore. There's a year in Neo, I was like waking up like for race starts at 4 in the morning. Not just like waking up at 4, but having to wake up at 2 and getting energized. And as I'm definitely someone who qualifies as a night owl, so trying to go to sleep at like 6 or 7 does not compute. I had to have a sleep study done, and it was like that. I just couldn't get to sleep because they wanted me there so early. Like, well, what time do you normally go to bed? It's like 4 in the morning, and it's like, well, no wonder you can't sleep. It's like 8. But yeah.
I liked how the races were. I didn't like how the races were later. Last year, I thought they were at a perfect time. They were at 12 noon for me on a Friday, which was perfect. Like, I'm awake, don't have to, wake up early, sleep late. It doesn't interfere my day too much. I didn't have much on
The start
Friday.
time definitely helped the Euros, though.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where I feel like, this time zone definitely helped the Euros. But for me, I was thinking this was terrible this year. Like, I hated the time 100%.
Right.
The only positive I can take out of the time was compared to the Grand Prix series, which was at like 11 p.m., 12 a.m. for me, or 1 a.m., depending on the time. this one was at, obviously, like I said, later in the morning, so like 5 a.m. So if I had to go to a party or hang out or do something, I could get home at like 3 a.m. and just get ready for Rallycross. And it's like, like just make sure you just have like, 1-2 drinks max, so you're not like, drunk going into the broadcast.
Plastered.
Fine.
Yeah. Going into next year, I think we'll likely see more strict stewarding. That'll be a big thing. I wouldn't mind them shaking up the format a little bit. Obviously, this would require them messing with their heat, with the way their heat racing works. I think the way it currently is, I don't think there's much you can do. But I'd almost like if we could extend sort of the format a little bit and get, so we'll have to race like 4 times, 5 times potentially before we get to the feature. I'd love to have like a 2-hour show, almost make it to where there's like a winner's bracket and a loser's bracket, so to speak. So that like, I don't know, just make it so that people have to be on track more often and get some of a little bit of the luck out of getting to the features. Right now, I mean, with 15 people not going to the show and only 10, that much majority missing out, it just seems like there's a huge it seems weird in the LCQs to have like 9 cars and only 2 transfers. I'd love to get those numbers cut down in some way.
On that note, I'm thinking, what if they find a way? Now, I haven't thought about this in length. Maybe in the future when I bring some Rallycross guests, which I'm definitely going to be doing in the future, a lot of them lined up, but maybe adjust the points format so that a feature race, like if you miss out on the feature, it's not as dramatic a change for the championship. Like in those final few rounds, as much as I love Sammy Matty Trogan, it was like, I wanted him to win the championship, but I was almost rooting for him to just miss a feature so we could have like 7 different drivers win the title.
Yeah, it definitely is something that I think needs correcting. Just making it so, because I mean, last place in the feature gets you like 50 points or something like that?
43, and the best
43 plus heat points and qualifying points essentially.
Qualifying is 6 points for pole, 8 points if you win the feature. If you win the heat. So if you essentially finish like 3rd in a consolation race, there's no points in consolation races anymore. You could have potentially had 6 points for qualifying, 6 points for the heat because you finished 3rd at best. So you could, there's already there 43 minus 12. There's a 31 point difference already just by missing the feature. Like, I think that's a little ridiculous. But one thing I didn't like was awarding, I don't know, I've never been a fan of awarding points in qualifying. And yesterday, like with the championship, we were doing a pre-race interview, and it's like the championship could be decided right now in qualifying, which I don't.
I think it was. I think it technically was because Sammy got 5 points right.
Yeah, and then there was only 78 available after that, and Mitchell was like 82 behind, or something.
Yeah, so he did. I know that in the broadcast we kind of played dumb a little bit. We were like, it could be decided in the feature when it was like definitely decided in qualifying. But yeah, it was. I wouldn't mind seeing that change. I don't mind giving a point for pole. But
again, that could still decide.
I'm saying 1 point. I think, and if that's what it comes down to, like if it's a single point, I'm kind of fine with that.
Well, I'll tell you what, like in Formula One in the past, they used to award points in qualifying, and Martin Brundle put it perfectly. He doesn't want to see the championship decided on the Saturday. So,
yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah. And another point as well, I'm sure we should award points for drivers who freaking managed to roll onto their roof the most, because Chepelevsky would have won the championship this year. But
yeah, you're right.
Stellian would have walked away with something. We'll bring on Stellian. I'm going to try and get him on this podcast again soon. It's almost been 12 months. Yeah,
man with the most intense rig in sim racing.
Oh, man. Yeah, well, yeah. I think that's one of my most viewed podcasts because of the clickbait name that I managed to...
What did you name it?
The most amazing sim rig in sim racing.
Oh, so I pretty much nailed it.
Yeah. I was like, what's going to get me 3 million views? But it's only got like a couple thousand.
Well, you had to put some dink cleavage in the thumbnail. That would have brought it way up.
No, and I didn't capitalize the title. It's like lowercase a couple words.
Oh, man.
Anything to plug, Randy, before we go?
Race Spot, Johnny, iRacing Esports Network. I don't know.
Are you plugging things you're supposed to plug?
I don't really have anything I'm supposed to plug.
Well, your
Race
Twitter,
Bot,
your
maybe.
chin strap. Your Twitter's been there the
Yeah,
entire
I don't really.
podcast.
I don't really tweet. I tweet rarely, and it's usually just laughing at other people or tagging my friend Tom and stuff. I'm actually pretty inactive on the social media side of things compared to a lot of people. I never got into the hype. I know a lot of people got into it and tweeting a lot. I know like you're pretty active, and like Paul Smith, but being active on Twitter and whatnot is something I've not really ever done. I'm too boring. I'm like, who cares what I think?
Well, we got you on this podcast for a reason, yeah.
That is true. I mean,
That
at
is
the end of
true.
the day, I'm just some like sim racing commentator where hats don't fit on my head properly.
Well, then you wouldn't win the hat trick award for sure. Let me tell you that
Yeah,
much.
that's true. That's
Yeah.
true. I'd be getting the thimble for that one.
All right, we'll leave you to it, mate. Catch ya. Thanks for coming on.
Yep, no worries, buddy. It was fun. Hopefully they bring this back for 2020.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Simon Racing Report. You can catch it on the SimonRacingReport.com or at any of our platforms, whether that's YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify as well. Love Spotify. You can grab the RSS feed, of course, too. And if you haven't already followed the podcast page, follow the podcast page on Facebook. Follow myself on Twitter at JohnnyS8. You can also follow T-Mad at Mad Sim Racing. And if you'd like to sponsor the podcast, visit the SimonRacingReport.com. Click the contact tab at the top of the screen, and we'll organize all of that for you for sure. But for now, though, we'll say goodbye for this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. It was definitely an exciting one to record. More coming up. We're reaching the century, like I said, and can't wait for episode 100. It's going to be a special one that's in the works. It's in planning. Can't wait for it. So just subscribe, and that's going to come up. Hopefully, I don't know when we're going to reach that, episode 100. Could be in 2020, I think. I don't think it'll be 2019. We're almost there, but it's I don't really like to celebrate a lot, but I thought, how many times am I going to reach 100 podcast episodes, for this channel? When am I going to reach 1,000, the next milestone? Why not just celebrate the 100th? It's going to be a good one. So it's already been more than 4 years for this podcast, and I just, I've been thoroughly thankful for everybody who's followed the podcast over the years. And it's just grown, hasn't it? It's gotten better, I feel, over the years, and hopefully even better for years to come. But hope you enjoyed. We'll see you soon for the next episode, number 96.